What is up, everybody? Welcome back to day 2 of our daily uploads before FSU kicks off this college football season on Saturday. We start week 0, and prior to week 0, we are coming every day with these conference championship predictions. Concluded by Friday, we are going to drop our preseason top 25 as well as our CFP bracket predictions. We'll have Michael here for that one. Those are going to be two great videos, our last two SEC championship prediction as well as that CFP bracket prediction. So stay tuned, guys, every day of the week. Yesterday, we dropped the Big 12, so go check that out if you haven't already. Today, we are going to be doing the ACC. We're going to be reviewing the top 10 for that conference, and then I'm going to break down who I think is going to be in the conference championship game, and ultimately, who I think the champion will be. So before I get into that, guys, remember, like the video, subscribe, comment down below what you want to see more of, and make sure to keep those notifications on. Like I said last time, we are pushing for the 200 subscriber mark. We're almost there. I believe we're at 178 at the time of filming this, so we're closing in. Share the video, get people to subscribe. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump right into this because I don't want to keep you here too long. The ACC, like I said yesterday about the Big 12, a conference that a lot of people are down on. You know, people are looking at this college football landscape as we are in the Big Power 2, and nothing else matters. No other teams can make a run at anything. No other teams can make noise. And I just don't think that's true. I mean, blatantly, I don't think that's true. I think the Big 12 has 5 teams, like I said yesterday, who I think can all cause trouble. And I think the ACC might have up to 7 teams who can all cause trouble for anyone. I think it's a really gritty conference. I think they have 2 to 3 teams that can be national title contenders, and 3 more that I think could ruin anybody's perfect season. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. I'm going to put the top 10 on the list right now. You're going to see here, I've got FSU 1. For as much as the bias could play in here, I think they are just top to bottom the best team. I think they've got a good offense, not a great one, a lot of unproven talent on the offense, and not a lot of returning offensive production. But I think they have an elite defense and the best head coach in the conference. Yes, even better than Dabo Swinney. I understand that Dabo's legacy is better. But I think in 2024, in this new modern landscape of college football, I think Mike Norvell is the best coach in the conference. So FSU is 1. Clemson stays NC State at number 2. They are my sleeper pick. I think I'm a lot higher on them than everyone else. And we'll get to them in a second because I have to explain why they are that high. So NC State at 2. Clemson then at 3, followed by Miami at 4. SMU at 5, and those top 5 teams I think are all not interchangeable, but they're all very good, and they're all going to be competing for a spot in that conference championship because these are all super talented teams on both sides of the ball. Then we look at that next tier, that's 6 through 8. I think is the second tier of the ACC. Virginia Tech, who has the potential to be a tier 1 team, but I got to see it first. Louisville, who was a tier 1 team in the ACC last year and returns not a lot of talent, but they get a lot of transfers in, and Jeff Brom's a good coach. Followed by Georgia Tech down at 8. I think that offense has the potential to cause a lot of people problems, mainly FSU week 0. And then you got that last tier of teams that fill out the top 10, Duke and UNC. Both are interchangeable. I do really like Malik Murphy, but with Mike Elko, who was one of the better coaches in the ACC, with him leaving to go take the Texas A&M job, and Riley Leonard leaving to go to Notre Dame, they lose a lot of production. RJ Oben on the defensive end goes. So you lose a lot of production there. I'm not sure you're going to quite be where you were last year. So they slipped to 9 in the conference, followed by UNC. I got to respect O'Marion Hampton, a great running back. And Mac Brown's a good coach. Max Johnson, decent QB. But I do not think that teams like these are competing with the top teams in the conference. And then you got those not on the list, the Cal, the Syracuses of the world. They're good teams, decent teams, and could be better in the future. But I do not think, for the sake of this video, that they will be contending for a championship spot. But speaking of which, let's look at the top of the conference. Let's look at the 2 teams that, according to me, would be playing in the ACC championship game, and that is FSU and NC State. And now, let's look at NC State for a second. You're going to probably think, why are they at 2? There's Clemson is, a big name brand. They've got a great defense. They're probably better. You can say Miami with the offseason hype and the roster additions that they might be better. And some might even say a team like Virginia Tech or SMU is better than NC State, but I don't think so. I look at this NC State team. I see guys like Grayson McCall on the offense, a great QB who transfers over from Coastal Carolina. You pair him with great receivers like Kevin Conception, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing his name, who went for almost 900 yards as a freshman last year, a freshman All-American, poised for a big year. You add receivers like Noah Rogers around here. You have a guy like Wesley Grimes, who also went for almost 400 yards last year. So you have a good cast of receivers. The run game is a little bit interesting, but we'll see. I'll get into that later when I'm breaking down the championship game. But you have a great batch of receivers, Grayson McCall, and a good coach in Dave Durant. I think he's one of the better coaches in college football. So because of that, I think they have the ability to really compete up here. But more importantly, let's look at their schedule, and I'm going to pull it up. When we compare that schedule to the likes of the Clemsons, who start their season at Georgia, and the Miamis and the FSUs of the world, you look at this. Remember, non-conference games don't really count towards the ACC championship. So even though they do play Tennessee, and what will likely be a loss, even though it's in Charlotte, the rest of the schedule is very winnable. You play at Clemson, that's probably a loss. After that, you really don't see many losable games. You get Duke at home. You go at Georgia Tech. Maybe that's a sneaky loss right there. That could be a second one. But let's say they go 10-2. They drop, or 9-3 even. They drop Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Tennessee. You have 2 ACC losses. Should be well enough. I mean, you'll be fighting for a spot in the championship game because Clemson has to play. I mean, maybe you beat Clemson, but Clemson has to play FSU. Miami has to play FSU, and some other teams they got to go to Virginia Tech, or they get Virginia Tech at home, but they still play Virginia Tech. So I don't know. There's a lot of opportunities in here. Miami does have to play Louisville, so a lot of these teams beat up on each other. NC State escapes with a relatively easy schedule, other than at Clemson and at Georgia Tech. I think almost every other game here is winnable. And really, you win that Georgia Tech game, I think you clinch yourself a spot in the NCC championship game. And with an offense like this, I think they'll be able to hang in there with anybody. So, it's a really winnable schedule. And paired with the good talented roster that they have mainly on offense, I think that's enough to compete with anybody. So if we look at that, we look at the top 10 landscape, and then we look at this team, and you can argue that Clemson and Miami could be there. I would hear you out. This is also somewhat for the sake of not, just making the same picks that everyone else does. We want to have a little bit of going out on a limb here on the channel. So we want to make a little bit of surprise picks. But let's look at this ACC championship game. FSU, NC State, neutral site, obviously. Just straight up, who is the better team? And honestly, on offense, as far as the passing offense goes, on paper in the preseason, you might have to give the edge to NC State. I think Grayson McCall and DJU are similar quarterbacks. DJU might be a little bit better. He's definitely played more prestigious teams than Grayson McCall has. And he's played in some bigger moments. But Grayson McCall, very talented QB. You look at the receivers, on paper right now, NC State definitely has the edge. I mean, Kevin Conception, like I said, great receiver as a freshman going into his sophomore year. Noah Rogers, talented high recruit, very young. He should be poised for a good year, breakout year with Grayson McCall. Wesley Grimes, again, contributors. You have contributors. And then if we look at the run game, they do bring in Jordan Waters, a transfer from Duke, who rushed for 819 yards last year, got a couple touchdowns. You pair that with a Kendrick Raphael, who got you 300-odd yards last year. So you do have some experience in the rushing room. Obviously, it's not like you're getting a group of 5 guys. You do know what you're getting for the most part in Jordan Waters. Running behind a similar O-line. I don't think there's huge differences between a Duke O-line and an NC State O-line. So that is, that brings quality to your run game. And that is probably my only question about them with offense is are you going to be super pass reliant, or can you run the ball with it? I mean, Grayson McCall can certainly do some damage with his legs. I don't know if that's going to be his primary weapon, but he can do some damage. But can you pair a run game with a super effective passing game? And if you can do that, it will make you a threat to beat FSU in this game. So now let's look at Florida State. Like I just said, not sure how I feel about their passing game. This is coming from a Florida State fan. I like DJU. I'm not in love with DJU. I need to see him do this in big moments, and we're going to see that throughout the year. And to be fair, if they are in this ACC championship game, he will have proved to a certain extent that he can do this in big games. So he didn't have the best year at Oregon State last year. Obviously, it was up and down. He led them to a pretty solid record. They made a bowl game. They got some good wins. They did beat a team like Utah, so that was their impressive win for the year. On the channel, we had them Oregon State in the top 10 on Sam standings for a little bit, for what that's worth. So DJU had his moments. He obviously had his moments at Clemson. So we know what we're getting there, right? So let's look at the run game, and this is where I think FSU is going to be most dominant. And when I review the defenses in a second, this is where I think NC State is susceptible to get beat. FSU brings back Lawrence Toafili, who basically single-handedly won them the ACC championship. He is a monster of a man, and he's going to be the primary back now without Trey Benson to steal his shine, right? So we take Toafili. We add a speedster in Roydell Williams to that room. We add a mega speedster in Jalen Lucas to the room. You got a power back in Cam Davis, and then you have other guys like Micah Danzy who are contributing as well. So this is a really deep, a really well-rounded running back room that can kind of hit you from all angles. You really don't know what you're going to get. Running behind a really good O-line too. So I think that is what's going to cause NC State some problems here, because if we look at NC State's defense for a second, they do not return much super productive defensive line players. I mean, you have Darvin Van on the edge. He got 17 tackles and about 5.5 sacks. I mean, that's your best returning defensive linemen. You get Brandon Cleveland at the DT who got a few tackles. You got 13 tackles and brought in 3 sacks. So you're not bringing much. It's not a lot of run stuffing. It's not a lot of getting pressure on the passer. And when you have a great O-line like FSU does, or at least a very good one, you're gonna have to get home, because if you can't get home if you can't get home on any elite level college quarterback, they're gonna find a pass eventually. But if you can't get home and you can't stop the run, now is where I start to feel susceptible that NC State can get beat. And that's why I think FSU, with a good coach like Mike Norvell and a good OC and Alex Atkins, I think that's what they're going to be able to take advantage of, and they're going to be able to run it down NC State's throat. But as far as the X factors in this game go for FSU on offense, it has to be Malik Benson, who we assume is the wide receiver 1, but he's coming in as wide receiver 1 after getting almost no action at Bama. So you're basically basing it all on this super athletic, twitchy potential, which I agree is there, but we do have to see it in action. So I'm excited to see that. But the true X factor in that receiving room is 2023 5-star Hakeem Williams, who we really didn't see any of last year. Even in the bowl game, he's had a bit of an injury history, and he's been beat up through fall camp, so it's not promising on that front either. But we need him to be good this year if FSU wants to win this game. If FSU wants to be anything on the national picture, it comes down to guys like Malik Benson, Hakeem Williams being good. You got other guys, redshirt freshman Jalen Brown, who's poised to be starting. Ja'Kai Douglas is going to have stuff to say in this. Some freshmen might get some run, like Elijah Moore and LaWayne McCoy, who both seem promising through the fall. So both those guys are going to get some run. But if we look at FSU's offense, those are definitely the X factors. It's those guys in the receiving room, because we know what the run game is going to bring. And I think that's what could lead to NC State getting beat here, because if we look at NC State, their X factors, I mean, I already kind of mentioned it. Run game, defense. They bring in some decent, they bring back decent like pass defenders. They had good DBs return. So that's not going to be as much of an issue for them. But it's going to be on that D line, right? Like, you don't bring in a lot of high name, no real high name transfers with a lot of production. You're recruiting at a decent level, but is it enough to keep up with the FSUs of the world who beat you in both portal and high school recruiting? It's not. So you are going to be out talented, and I really like the offense, but in a game like this against an elite head coach in Mike Norvell and a well coached, what should be elite team in FSU, you need more than a good offense. It's just you do. You look at FSU's schedule, the only team that I think even has a chance of beating them is Clemson and Notre Dame. I don't even think Miami can win unless the defense turns around. But you got to look at Clemson and Notre Dame, who bring elite defenses and pair it with good, at least quality offenses. But defense is what wins championships. It's the oldest saying in the book, and it's going to apply here. Defense is going to win you the ACC championship game. So because of that, I do think Florida State comes away with this. You look at this defense. I mean, man, you bring back Patrick Payton. He gets 7 sacks on a line last year with Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Fabian Lovett, and the other returning depth guys who were still there. And Patrick Payton still came away with 7 sacks. So the man's projected to be a first round or 2 pick next year. You bring him back, he's going to be the star of the defensive line, but you pair him with Joshua Farmer, Daryl Jackson in the trenches, and the meat of the trenches. And they are 2 big boys. I mean, they are both averaging about 6'5", 300-odd pounds, like 330 pounds, I think, between the 2 of them. Like, that's the average. And that is ridiculous. Daryl Jackson was rated number 5 on, I believe it was CBS's freak list. Maybe it was 24/7's. But so Daryl Jackson, athletic freak from Miami. We didn't get to see him play last year because of stupid NCAA probations. He's there. Joshua Farmer, the returning star of the defensive tackle group from last year, he's back. And now, he's in DT1 now that Fabian Lovett and Fisk are gone. So he's there. And on the other end, we bring in 5-star from Georgia. We bring in Marvin Jones Jr., who's poised for his breakout year. So, I love the 4 up front. I think they're going to stuff NC State's run game. And then I think they're going to dethrone their strength, which is the passing game, by getting to the passer. So I think they'll have Grayson McCall beat. I think they'll have this NC State line beat, and from there it'll cause problems. And that's not even talking about the back end of Fentrell Cypress, Azaria Thomas. I was talking before this. I think the X factors for FSU in this game on defense, and really as a season as a whole, not particularly this game, I think they'll be good without them in this game. But for the season as a whole, if they want to be where they, aspire to be as a team, Conrad Hussey needs to bloom into the star that we need him to be at safety. And one of these other linebackers, I like what I got in DJ Lundy, but I need to see either Cam Riley, Omar Graham, or Sean Murphy. One of those guys needs to step up and be for sure linebacker too. But we look at all that. This FSU defense is just too good, man. I think it's going to shut down everything NC State is going. I love NC State's offense, so I think they're the sleeper. As far as the other teams in the conference, an overrated team, just throwing out there, I think an overrated team is Clemson. I don't think their offense can compete with some of the best teams, and I think it's going to fall apart because of that. And for a dark horse, I think Syracuse. I like Fran Brown. I like Kyle McCord. He had a good year at Ohio State, and he just got blamed for a lot of their shortcomings, even if he was kind of the fault for some of it. I mean, you don't got to be right. You don't got to be a star at Syracuse to be really good. So I think he's a good quality quarterback in that system with a good coach. I think they're the sleeper team in this, or the dark horse sleeper team in this conference. Overrated is Clemson, and my sleeper on the national level is NC State, because I don't think a lot of people have them where I have them. So those are my three teams for that category. I think FSU wins the ACC championship game with a score of about 24-13, maybe 21-13. I think their defense just takes over and shuts them down. And Norvell runs the ball, runs it down their throat to waste time. So we get more of a low-scoring affair. But yeah, FSU conference champions, 24 or 21-13, and they take. Well, I'll predict they take the third seed on the national scale. I think even if they did go 11-1 with only a loss to Notre Dame, I probably still think that they only get the 3. I don't think they would put them above a Big Ten team. But yeah, so FSU gets the 3 spot. We said yesterday we think Utah gets the 4. So Utah 4, FSU 3, and tune in tomorrow to find out who we think is the 2 seed coming out of the Big Ten, because it'll be a great video. But on that note, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching the whole video. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below. Like I said, keep those post notifications on, and continue supporting us on this journey to 200, and then beyond 200 all the way up to 1,000. So we'll keep running this up. But yeah, thank you guys so much for the support as always. Stay tuned tomorrow. We've got Big Ten coming, and then stay tuned the rest of the week because we have great content before FSU plays Saturday. So go Noles. Thank you for supporting, and until next time.